So I debated Stephen a month ago, and I haven't been talking about it for a number of reasons. We had minimal interaction after the debate, just a message sending me the notes and a short conversation. Only to find out yesterday that he made a podcast where he talks about our debate, mainly the cross-examination, for about 45 minutes. Before I leave the screen, I want you to note, he's in the affirmative, I'm in the negative in the debate. I don't know if this is available anywhere other than Spotify. If you want to hear someone critique me, then whether you watch the debate or not, here's a good place. I understand a lot of people didn't watch the debate, and they literally told me this, like, I didn't know what it was about, I don't know what monergism is. That's fine. It's really the heart of our disagreements of theology, and that's why I thought it was important to go there rather than any other doctrinal topic. The reason I haven't been talking about the debate is Stephen came in unprepared, not as prepared as he could have been or should have been. And that's not me being overcritical, that's what he admits in this discussion. I wouldn't call this a discussion, in this podcast. He claims I wasn't prepared either. I'm just going to leave that to opinion. The other main criticism was I didn't really elaborate on my position, and that confuses me for a number of reasons. One, I'm in the negative, so you have to put forth your position, and I'm going to oppose that position or bring up reasons and evidence why that position is untenable. If I present a number of different positions, whether I take those positions or not, I felt like it was the affirmative's duty to show that those possibilities are not logically valid, and therefore his position is strengthened. And again, the proposition was, did Paul teach monergism? And if you're going to build your case around Romans 8 and 9, then we could have just said, did Paul teach monergism in Romans? And Stephen says in the podcast, he says, we should have a debate about Romans 8. Well, we just did that. We had a debate about Romans 8 and 9. I wasn't prepared to give the details of Romans 8 and 9 because the scope of the debate was much broader. I'm a bit more comfortable now dealing with Romans 9 than I was then. But here's the other thing. I knew during the debate you were not prepared, so I was not as sharp and was not as to the point as I could have been on a lot of these issues. I did not hold your feet to the fire. I did not walk down these particular avenues or these particular topics. I even kind of changed the topic in the cross-examination because I just wanted to have a continued discussion because I didn't feel the debate was getting anywhere. So if I'm going to show charity to you because you show up unprepared and then you take that and turn that against me, I have a problem with that. I said from the beginning we need to sit down and have a discussion because when we made TikToks, we were talking past each other. We were in a debate and we're still talking past each other. And I'm not entirely sure how it's happening. You thought you made arguments. I didn't think you made arguments. I think you continue to read the text and say, this is what it means and that fits what I believe. I brought up several arguments that weren't addressed, and you can't say all of them were from Acts because I alluded to passages from Paul in my presentation. Not just things Paul said in Acts, things that Paul wrote, which there was a misunderstanding on what the focus of the debate was on, whether we could quote Paul in the book of Acts or whether it was just Paul's writings. So I granted you that and I abandoned the Acts material, and still. So the critique seemed to be I didn't establish my position firmly when my job wasn't to have a position, and I was too charitable. And another critique was I didn't deal with his presentation in the cross-examination. I was asking philosophical questions or broader questions. Watch the debate. I had rebuttals. I dealt with things point by point. I didn't deal with every issue because I was worried it was getting off topic. Like in the podcast, he talks about the T in tulip and the I in P in tulip. But what do those things have to do with synergism and monergism and conversion? Like, what does finding those in Romans 8, or whether we can find them in Romans 8, have to do with whether God is the only one involved in conversion or whether man must accept or respond to the gospel? And if you ask me a question and I tell you man either accepts or rejects the gospel, and you want to tell me at that time, well, where do you find that in Scripture, and ask me that, then I would allude to Scripture. But to after the fact go through and say that, well, I base that on philosophy, not Scripture, that just doesn't seem fair to me. So we can watch the debate and comment on it, because you think you're making arguments and I'm not hearing your arguments. That's clearly the problem. That's why I said we should have a discussion from the beginning. That's why I think we should have another discussion before we even talk about debating again. We could have the same debate, only I'm in the affirmative. I'm saying, did Paul teach synergism? And I could set forth my case. And you could put me on the hot seat. You can be in the negative on that and try to tear that down. There seems to be a fundamental disconnect in what the debate should have been and what the debate should be, and what our purposes and goals were in having this conversation.